Vernon Noble was born in San Rafael, California on November 3rd, 1918. He and his family lived in San Anselmo, where he attended the local schools. He was always an inquisitive child. His father worked for the railroad, which ran on electricity. I guess some of the equipment in the railroad was not child-proof, because one time Vernon visited his father and touched something he should not have touched. He received a pretty strong jolt, and I don't know if he ever did tell his father about that. He was involved in music early, took piano lessons at the age of 5, and learned the clarinet and saxophone in high school. During high school, he played in 2 dance bands, and he would work 12 hours at a local grocery store on a Saturday after a Friday night gig. Even with all those activities, he was valedictorian of his graduating high school class. After high school, he commuted to San Francisco State. Vernon was prone to motion sickness, but I guess the short ferry ride to San Francisco was not too bad for him. People with musical ears, I guess, have motion sickness issues. I don't know. I don't have that. He became interested in choral music at San Francisco State and became president of the San Francisco State Choir and student conductor. In 1941, he graduated with honors from San Francisco State with a bachelor's in music and a special secondary teaching credential. Vernon's first teaching job was teaching 8th grade in McLeod. Up Highway 5 to Mount Shasta, hang a right. It's a 4-hour drive on today's freeways, and I imagine what it was like in 1941. During that year at McLeod, Vernon received an insistent letter from the United States government inviting his services to the Army. His first 3 years in the Army were spent at Camp Roberts down by San Luis Obispo. While he was there, his mother passed away. He went to the service. The church organist was a young, tall, slender woman. Later, Vernon's father and sister always made sure that this young organist was invited for dinner when Vernon came up for leave from the Army. The courtship between Vernon and Chick had begun. Late in April of 1944, Vernon received notice that his Army unit was being shipped to Europe. Vernon called Chick and proposed. She said yes. The wedding was scheduled. Vernon drove up to San Francisco very quickly. I guess he rode the train. I'm sorry about that. The rehearsal was at 3:20 and the wedding was at 3:30. Chick and Vernon had a week together before Vernon was sent to North Carolina and then on to Normandy and Le Havre, France. Happily, Vernon's unit saw combat for only 2 months, and then the war ended. Remember I mentioned Vernon's problem with motion issues? Well, on the way back to America, he spent 2 weeks in a troop transport ship in December, crossing the Atlantic. It was not like the ferry rides from Marin County to San Francisco. Needless to say, the trip across the Atlantic was not easily forgotten. Vernon was reunited with Chick on December 26, 1945. Nice Christmas gift. Vernon and Chick moved to Richmond, and he enrolled in graduate school at UC Berkeley. Vernon accepted a job at Liberty Union High School, and they moved to Brentwood in August of 1946. Very soon after arriving in Brentwood, Vernon and Chick were recruited by Reverend Bob McMillan, pastor of this church, to be choir director and organist. Vernon directed the choir for 37 years, and then he sang with the basses until his eyesight got to the point where he could no longer read the music. Some of you might know some of you may not know that the troublemakers of the choir generally sit in the back row. I sat there for many years and caused more than my share of trouble for Vernon when he was director. I have to tell you now that when he joined us in the back row, he fit in perfectly. The man had a wry sense of humor and a dry wit. Need I say more? Over the years, Vernon held every office available in this church. He applied his unique skills of organization and thoroughness to every office and every job he accepted. When he became church historian, he researched our local history. He went to Martinez and went through 100 years of property records. He found the copy of the deed that recorded the purchase of the land this building sits on. It was purchased on June 3rd, 1884 for the price of $5 in gold coin. This church is fortunate to have had Vernon as a member for nearly 70 years. Vernon was hired to teach band at Liberty Union High School, which he did for 11 years. Vernon told many stories of those early years, and I remember one story about a Friday night football game where there was a torrential downpour. Vernon did not want to take the band out in that rainstorm for fear of damaging the instruments and the kids. However, people expected the band to be there. Happily, in those days, the band room was right up against the football field, so the band stayed in the building and opened all the doors and windows and played their hearts out. Mission accomplished. In 1957, Alan Jones was hired to teach the band, and Vernon became Dean of Boys, but he still taught the school choirs for another 6 years. He became vice principal for counseling and ended his career at Liberty as assistant principal. He oversaw the conversion of the student record-keeping system from a manual hand entry to a computerized system. Liberty's early data processing was done in Santa Clara, and Vernon made many trips back and forth from the data center with stacks of IBM punch cards in the back of his car. I can remember one time when a secretary dropped a stack of IBM cards on the floor, picked them up, and hoped that Vernon wouldn't find out. Wasn't that you, Alta? He continued with his interest in computers and even taught Cal State Hayward, which is now California State University East Bay, computer courses for teachers and also local computer classes for adults at Liberty Adult Ed. Vernon wrote a computer program to organize his grocery shopping list. During the week, he would enter into the computer the things that he had used up in the kitchen during the week, and on shopping day, his program would print out his shopping list, organized by the aisle at Food Max where he shopped. That saves steps because his shopping list was now in the order of how he walked up and down the aisles at Food Max. Even though his eyesight was failing, Vernon was at his computer daily, checking news, email, and taking care of his finances online. Vernon died Saturday night, September 26, 2015. He will be missed by us all. I have to express my appreciation to the Reverend Ellen Rowan. I stole quite a bit of Vernon's early history from an interview she did with him many years ago. We are approaching the time in the service where people get to share their memories of Vernon. Like most teachers, once I get going in front of a crowd, it's hard to stop me. Besides, possession of the microphone is 9/10 of the law, right? So I'm going to tell you some of my memories. I was hired to teach chemistry and physics at Liberty Union High School in those days in 1970. Vernon was one of the first people I met there, and I have to admit that I was more than a little intimidated by him. He was so serious. He was so proper. He was so organized. He had to give us teachers deadlines. Especially in the early days of computer data processing, he had to factor in time for him to drive the data to Santa Clara. Remember those IBM punch cards, Alta? Some of us would forget and miss a deadline. Never me. Yeah, right. Vernon had little reminders he would send. One was a sketch of an elephant with a string tied with a big bow around its trunk. Another one I received often, or I should say, another one I saw often, was a sketch of a hand with an outstretched finger with a bow tied on it. And believe me, nobody wanted to receive the finger from Vernon. Shortly after I moved to Brentwood, I started looking for a church to attend. The first church I visited was this one. I sat in the back row. I was fully prepared to sneak out after the service, but I was foiled. I was immediately surrounded by a friendly, welcoming people, and that's still a trademark of this congregation. I quickly became aware that Liberty's principal, both vice principals, the principal's secretary, and many teachers were members here. I figured this church would be a good fit for me, so I stayed. Soon I joined the choir, and I started to see another side of Vernon Noble. I was still intimidated for a lot of the same reasons. He was so serious. He was so proper. He was so organized. When he was in front of the choir, he was all business. What a director. He could hear everything. I think Alta could talk to us about how he could hear things in the office, but that's another story. He knew if one person sang a wrong note, he could sing all of the parts of the music and show us how it was to be done. He made us sing the right notes and the right words, all at the right time. He even made us pronounce the words correctly. He was a perfectionist. If the mistake was small, he would just raise an eyebrow. Oh, those eyebrows. I swear he could direct the choir with those eyebrows. Vernon denied that he had perfect pitch, but if he didn't have perfect pitch, he was pretty close to it. One time I remember Vernon wanted to start choir practice and Chick was busy around in the back of the church. So Vernon hummed the starting pitches for the sopranos and for the altos and for the tenors and for the basses, and we started singing. Chick came up to the organ and she found where we were in the music and started to play along with us. And we were all in the same key, the same pitch. It was right. That totally blew me away. Some of you may be familiar with the drawbridge on Highway 160 between Antioch and Rio Vista. That deck of that drawbridge has a metal grating on it that, depending on how fast you're driving, it gives you a pitch, a hum as you go across. Vernon used to play a game to guess what pitch the car would make on that grating when he drove across it, and he was right most of the time. One of Vernon's hobbies was photography, and at one time he had his own darkroom. He was a very creative person. In the early 50s, Chick and Vernon made their own Christmas cards. Two of the more elaborate cards involved Vernon taking pictures of Chick and of himself singing in various postures with different clothes on. And then he cut out those photographs and arranged them into kind of a diorama. And then he took a photo of that arrangement, made the Christmas card, making that the entire choir one year, the entire band in another year was Chick in Vernon in these various poses. The Christmas cards are on the display board in the social hall. Take a look at them. Chick also put a how we did it photo underneath it, so you could see a little bit further away image of how they arranged all that stuff on their kitchen table. Did I mention Vernon was organized? When Vernon asked me to do the eulogy for this service and to help Larry with the estate, he promised me that would not be an overwhelming task. He had everything organized. He showed me his fireproof file box where he kept his important papers. After his passing, I opened the box and there were file folders there. One was labeled Vernon Noble Memorial Service. Vernon wrote the bulletin you have in your hand. Okay, we added the photo on the front and the graphic on the back, but the scripture readings and the music were all specifically chosen by Vernon for this service. There was another folder labeled Tasks for the Trustee. In the front of the folder was an obituary. He wrote his own obituary. It ran almost word for word in the local newspapers. Also in that folder, I found a 9-page document listing the things that had to be done, all organized in paragraphs with sub-paragraphs. He included all the important information: phone numbers, addresses, account numbers. The first main paragraph was funeral parlor. It had 9 sub-paragraphs indicating his wishes. The second main paragraph was church. It had 17 sub-paragraphs. That level of detail went on for 9 pages. Towards the end of the document, he lists contact information for the utilities. There was a note there that I kind of giggled at because Vernon suggests that we probably should not turn the electricity, gas, and water off until the house is sold. Good thinking, Vernon. Vernon and Chick had no children, but they helped many young people over the years, and I'm one of them. My family was up north, and it was not easy to seek advice over the phone. Vernon and Chick were here, available, and truly interested in helping. I can't count the number of times I ended up at their house for advice. I remember one instance in particular when I was considering leaving Liberty for a position at Vacaville High School. I was truly torn. To whom should I go? Chick and Vernon, of course. Vernon says, "Come on in." He put 4 pieces of paper on the floor of the living room. We got down on our hands and knees and we wrote. He wanted me to list on paper, not just talking, the pluses and minuses of staying at Liberty and the pluses and minuses of going to Vacaville. He never tried to influence my decision. He insisted that I make an informed and logical decision. I guess it's obvious which decision I made. Vernon advised me on decisions of lesser importance also. When I retired, I decided to buy season tickets to the San Francisco Symphony. I don't know if you've seen the season listings of the symphony's concerts, but it goes on for 4 or 5 pages. So I went to Vernon. He went over the list of concerts and marked the music he thought I would enjoy. But always the teacher. He also marked the music he thought I should listen to in order to broaden my appreciation for music. Vernon's love for people was returned 4-fold and more. When Vernon could no longer do things for himself, he had to reach out to others for help. There were a multitude of people who helped Vernon. I won't name names because I know I would miss someone. But people came forward to take him to doctor appointments, to take him shopping, to take him to and from church, to help him around the house, to fix his thermostat, to fix his computer, to roll his trash, yard waste, and recycling bins out to the street. I could go on and on, but I won't. Thank you and goodbye. Vernon.